Welcome to the Super English Talks. My name is Jara, and this is the place where your journey to confident speaking begins. Here, we are not only going to learn English, we are going to learn how to use English to connect with real people in real situations. If you are ready to start speaking with confidence, do me a favor. Pause for a moment and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to click the little bell notification icon too. This way, you will be part of our community and never miss a single step on this journey. Our adventure into real, everyday English starts right now. Let me start with a story. It's about a woman named Maya. Maya was an accountant and a very good one. She had a mind for numbers that was sharp and clear, like perfectly cut glass. She was organized, efficient, and respected by her colleagues. When it came to English, she was excellent. She could read complicated reports, write professional emails, and score very high on English tests. One day, her company decided to send her to a big, international conference in New York City. Maya was excited, but also very scared. She could understand the complex presentations and financial terms. But what worried her most were the small in-between moments, the coffee breaks, the casual lunches, the networking sessions. These were times when she would have to speak English with people she did not know. To her, those moments felt like a nightmare. Maya's fear was not new. It had been with her since she was a teenager. She remembered one English class when she mispronounced the word vegetable. The whole class laughed. It wasn't mean-spirited, just a quick laugh, but it left a mark on her. From that day, a small voice in her head whispered, "Be careful. Don't make mistakes. People will laugh at you." That fear had stayed with Maya for years, quietly stopping her from speaking English freely. She could write, read, and understand perfectly, but speaking real, everyday speaking was something that made her anxious. And this is where so many English learners get stuck. Knowing English is not the same as using English. But here, in this podcast, we're going to work on exactly that. We will practice speaking, building confidence, and using English to connect with real people. By following this journey, you can finally start to speak English without fear. You can start to feel confident in conversations just like Maya can one day. Your English is not trapped. You just need the right guidance to unlock it. And that's what we will do together. Over the years, that little voice in Maya's head had grown louder. And now, at the conference, it was louder than ever. Her first day was like the perfect storm for that voice. During the first coffee break, Maya found herself standing alone in a far corner of the large, busy room. She held her coffee cup so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The room was full of energy. People were laughing, shaking hands, exchanging business cards, and making plans for dinner. They looked so relaxed and confident. Maya wanted to join them. She really did. She even practiced a few lines in her head. "Hello, my name is Maya. I am an accountant from Mumbai. Did you enjoy the first speaker?" But when she tried to imagine saying them out loud, the words felt stiff and unnatural. They sounded like lines from a bad movie. They didn't feel like her at all. She noticed a small group near the window. They looked friendly, smiling, and open. Maya took a deep breath and stepped forward. One step, then another. But just as she was about to speak, she froze. The little voice in her head screamed, "What if they notice your accent? What if you make a grammar mistake? What if they use slang you don't understand? What if you don't get their joke?" The fear felt like a solid, invisible wall. Defeated, she turned back and returned to her lonely corner. She stared into her coffee cup until the break ended. A familiar, heavy feeling settled over her shoulders, a feeling of failure and shame. That evening, Feeling frustrated and foolish in her expensive hotel room, Maya called her best friend, Sarah. Sarah was a language teacher with a calm and patient soul. She listened quietly as Maya poured out her story. Her voice was thick with disappointment and anxiety. When Maya finished, Sarah didn't give her a grammar lesson. She didn't suggest new vocabulary words or practice exercises. Instead, she said something simple but powerful enough to change everything. Maya, Sarah said gently, you're trying to win a gold medal in the Perfection Olympics. But conversation is not a competition. Conversation is an invitation. It's about connection. She continued, tomorrow, I want you to try something completely different. Don't focus on yourself. Don't think about what you need to say next. Instead, become a detective. Your job is to listen. Be curious. Try to discover something interesting about the person you are talking to. This is the first and most important step to becoming a confident speaker. Sarah explained that most people think they need perfect English to have a good conversation. But the truth is different. The most engaging, charismatic, and well-loved conversationalists are almost always the best listeners. When you focus on listening, two amazing things happen. The pressure to perform disappears. You no longer need to be the star who delivers a perfect speech. Instead, you become part of the conversation, a curious and engaged listener. Your job is simply to pay attention. People love to be listened to. In a world where everyone is waiting for their turn to talk, giving someone your full attention is rare and special. When you show genuine interest, people feel seen and valued. They naturally want to talk to you more. Maya realized that the key to speaking confidently wasn't about perfect English. It was about connection, curiosity, and listening. And that small shift in mindset was about to change everything. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a sign that you are trying, that you are in the arena, taking action. Let me share a little story from my own life. A few years ago, I was traveling in a small, beautiful village in Spain. My Spanish at the time was very basic, barely enough to get by. One day, I walked into a tiny, old-fashioned bakery. The air was warm and smelled wonderfully of yeast and sugar. I wanted to buy a loaf of bread for my dinner. The correct word for bread is pan. But my nervousness got the better of me. I mixed up words, got the grammar wrong, and confidently said something that, if translated, came out like, I would like a stick of pain, please. The baker, a man with flour dusting his eyebrows, stared at me in complete confusion. For a moment, I thought I had completely ruined everything. Then his eyes widened. He realized what I meant, and a slow grin spread across his face. He let out a deep, warm belly laugh. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was a laugh of shared human silliness. He pointed to a golden loaf of bread and said slowly, "Pan, no pain." I felt a flash of embarrassment, but his laugh was so infectious that I started laughing too. In that moment, our language barrier disappeared. My mistake didn't create a wall between us. It broke one down. For the rest of my stay in that village, every time I went into his bakery, he would greet me with a twinkling smile and ask, "Just bread today? No pain." That silly mistake became a shared joke, a connection. Think about it. When someone is learning your native language, do you focus on every tiny mistake they make? Do you judge their accent or a wrong preposition? Of course not. You are usually happy that they are trying to communicate. Most people are kind and patient. They care more about your message than perfect grammar. So let's make a deal. From now on, you are giving yourself permission to be gloriously imperfect. You are giving yourself permission to make mistakes, forget words, mix up tenses, and speak with an accent that tells the story of who you are. Your goal is not to be a perfect English speaker. Your goal is to be a brave English communicator. Now, let's go back to Maya. The next morning, she walked into the conference hall with Sarah's words in her mind. Be a detective. Be curious. During the coffee break, she didn't retreat to her corner. She took a deep breath and stood near the coffee machine, listening. She overheard a man with a friendly face and a colorful tie complaining to his friend about the terrible traffic that morning. This was her chance. Instead of trying to plan a perfect sentence, she simply said, "The traffic was bad for you, too." It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't witty, but it was real. He started telling Maya about the part of the city where he was staying. And Maya didn't rush. She just listened carefully. She asked simple, curious questions like, "Oh, really? And what is that area like? Is there a good place to eat nearby?" She didn't talk much about herself. She made a few small grammar mistakes, like saying eat instead of ate. But it didn't matter. At the end of the 10-minute break, the man shook her hand warmly and said, "It was so nice talking with you, Maya." For the very first time, Maya felt a tiny spark of success inside her. She realized she didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to have flawless grammar or a perfect accent. She just had to be present and genuinely interested in the other person. Now, here is your first practice. Think about a situation where you might speak English this week. It could be a meeting at work, a video call, a short conversation at a shop or cafe. Instead of worrying about what you will say, set one simple goal. Be a detective. Your mission is to learn about the other person. Try to discover 3 new things about them. Ask questions, listen carefully, and be curious. That's it. This shift in mindset can feel amazing. It takes away the heavy weight of worrying about being perfect. Suddenly, speaking English doesn't feel like a performance. It becomes a chance to connect, to understand someone, and to be human. Let's go back to Maya. The next morning, she walked into the conference hall with Sarah's advice echoing in her mind. Be a detective. Be curious. During the coffee break, she didn't retreat to her corner. She stood near the coffee machine, took a deep breath, and listened. She overheard a man in a colorful tie complaining to his friend about the terrible traffic. This was her opportunity. Instead of trying to plan a perfect sentence, she said simply, "The traffic was bad for you, too." It wasn't clever or witty, but it was real. The man turned to her, smiled, and said, "Oh, it was awful. It took me over an hour to get here from my hotel." Maya's mission was to listen and be curious. So she asked, "An hour? Wow. Where are you coming from?" He started telling her about the area where he was staying. Maya just kept listening and asking simple questions. "Oh, really? What is that area like? Is there a good place to eat nearby?" She didn't talk much about herself. She made a few small grammar mistakes. But at the end of the 10-minute break, the man shook her hand warmly and said again, "It was so nice talking with you, Maya." For the first time, Maya felt a small, warm spark of success. She realized something important. You don't have to be perfect to connect with people. You just have to be present, curious, and willing to listen. Now, it's your turn. Think about your week. Where could you practice being a detective in English? Who could you listen to and learn from? Remember, this is just the first step. A greeting is the first word in the story. The real challenge is finding the words to continue the conversation. How do you move from a simple hello to a meaningful, real conversation? That's what we will practice together. One step at a time, you will learn to speak English with confidence, curiosity, and joy. There's a wonderful and very easy to remember technique to help start conversations. It's called the ARE method. That stands for anchor, reveal, and encourage. Let's break it down slowly so it's easy to understand and use. A is for anchor. An anchor is something that you and the other person both share or notice at that exact moment. It's a point of connection, a small, neutral thing that links your two worlds. The easiest anchors are simple and universal. The situation you are in. Are you at a conference, standing in a long line, or waiting at a bus stop in the rain? The weather. I can't believe how cold it is today. Something you are both experiencing. The food, the music, or an event that just happened. For example, if you're standing in a long line at a coffee shop, you could smile and say, "Wow, this line is really long this morning." That's your anchor. You've created a tiny shared experience and made a connection. R is for reveal. Now that you've anchored the conversation, it's time to reveal a small, low-risk piece of information about yourself. It doesn't have to be personal or deep. The goal is just to make yourself relatable and human. It's a way of saying, I'm a real person, not just a stranger. Continuing the coffee example, after your anchor, you might say, I guess a lot of people need their coffee on Mondays. I know I definitely do. I can barely keep my eyes open. This is your reveal. You've shared something simple about yourself that the other person can relate to. It makes the conversation feel friendly, not like an interview. E is for encourage. Finally, you encourage the other person to speak. This is the most important step because it keeps the conversation going. Ask an open-ended question, one that cannot be answered with a simple yes or no. This invites the other person to share something about themselves. For example, what's your go-to coffee order? Is this your usual coffee spot? Are you heading to work after this? This hands the conversation over to the other person and shows that you're interested in them. Let's see how this works in real life. Meet Leo. On his first day in a new apartment building in Toronto, he gets into the elevator. An older woman with kind eyes and a friendly smile gets in with him. Leo's heart starts beating faster. He remembers the ARE method. Anchor. The elevator is old and very slow. He says, This elevator is a little slow, isn't it? The woman smiles and nods. Oh, it certainly is. I think a turtle could beat it in a race. Reveal. Now Leo shares a small piece about himself. It's my first day in the building. Encourage. Finally, he asks a question to keep the conversation going. Do you live on this floor? The woman smiles warmly, and the conversation flows naturally. By using the ARE method, Leo turned a short, awkward elevator ride into a friendly connection. This method is simple, easy to remember, and powerful. It works anywhere, at work, on the street, in class, or even at a coffee shop. With anchor, reveal, and encourage, you can start conversations confidently, and it's much easier to move from a simple hello to a real connection. Leo continues his practice with the ARE method. After revealing that he just moved in on the 10th floor, he asks the woman, Have you lived here for a long time? The woman's face lights up with a warm smile. Oh, welcome to the building. How wonderful. Yes, I've been here for over 20 years. It's a lovely place. My name is Carol, by the way. I'm in 7B. Just like that, with one simple, structured sequence, anchor, reveal, encourage, Leo has started a conversation, learned his neighbor's name, made his first connection in his new home, and now knows who to ask if he has questions about the building. He didn't have to be funny, brilliant, or charming. He just had to be observant and curious. Let's see another example with Leo. A week later, he is at a bus stop. It's drizzling, and the bus is running late. A man about his age is also waiting, looking impatiently at his watch. Leo thinks, "Anchor. Looks like the bus is running a bit late today," he says. The man nods. "Yeah, tells me about it. I'm going to be late for work." Reveal. "I'm still getting used to the bus schedule here. It seems a bit unpredictable." Encourage. "Do you take this bus every day?" This simple question could lead to a conversation about jobs, neighborhoods, or just shared frustration with public transport. It's a small, natural way to connect with someone. Now it's your turn. Let's imagine a few situations. Situation 1. You are at a park sitting on a bench. A person sits down at the other end with a beautiful, energetic dog. How could you use the R method? Anchor. What a beautiful day to be at the park. Reveal. I love coming here to read on my lunch break. Encourage. Is this your first time here? Or you could focus on the dog. Anchor. Your dog has so much energy. Reveal. It reminds me of the dog I had when I was a kid. Encourage. What breed is he? Situation 2. You are at a company party. The music is loud. You are standing near the food table next to a coworker you don't know well. Anchor. This music is really loud, isn't it? Or these little sandwiches are surprisingly good. Reveal. I'm not usually a big fan of company parties, but the food is a definite plus. Encourage. Are you having a good time? Or have you tried the little cheese puffs? I think they're the best thing here. Small talk is a skill, and like any skill, playing piano, cooking, or riding a bike, it gets better with practice. The more you consciously use the R method, the more natural it becomes. You'll start noticing opportunities to speak everywhere, in the elevator, at the coffee shop, waiting for the printer at work. Start small. Don't try to have a deep, 30-minute philosophical conversation with the first person you meet. Aim for a short, 2-minute exchange. These small, low-risk victories will build your confidence. And little by little, you will find it easier and easier to start longer conversations in the future. Remember Leo? He didn't become a master of conversation overnight. He started small, talking in a slow elevator or with someone waiting for a late bus. And that's a perfect place for anyone to start. Leo is getting better at starting conversations. He's using the R method and feeling more confident in his daily interactions. But soon he notices a pattern. His conversations often feel short, like a spark that lights brightly for a moment, then quickly fades. He might have a nice 2-minute chat about the weather or the weekend, and then comes that familiar awkward pause. The other person will say something like, "Well, it was nice talking to you," and walk away. Leo is building the first part of the bridge, but he doesn't yet know how to get people to cross it with him. He wants to move from polite small talk to actually getting to know people and making real friends. This brings us to the next essential skill, the art of asking great questions. If small talk opens the door, asking good questions is what invites someone inside for a longer, more comfortable conversation. This is how a simple exchange becomes a genuine connection. It shows that you're not just being polite, you're truly interested in the other person. Let's meet Chloe, a new character. Chloe is a bright university student who has just moved to a new city to study biology. She's sitting in a huge lecture hall filled with hundreds of other students. She feels small, anonymous, and a little lonely. She wants to make friends, but she doesn't know how to go beyond the basic, "Hi, what's your major?" type of conversation. She sees groups of students laughing and chatting before class, and she wishes she could be part of that easy, comfortable camaraderie. The first thing Chloe needs to understand is the difference between closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions can usually be answered with a single word, like yes or no, or a very short answer. Examples include, do you like this class? Are you from the city? Did you do the reading for today? Closed questions aren't bad, but they stop the conversation. They're like closed doors. If you ask 3 in a row, it can start to feel like an interrogation, not a friendly chat. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, invite longer, more detailed answers. They are keys that unlock the other person's thoughts, feelings, and stories. These questions often start with what, why, how, or phrases like, tell me about, or what's it like? For example, instead of asking, do you like this class? Closed question, Chloe could ask, what do you find most interesting about this class so far? Instead of, are you from this city? Closed, she could ask, what's it like growing up in this city? Or, how is this city different from your hometown? These open-ended questions create a world of possibilities. They let the other person share stories, opinions, and feelings. They make the conversation deeper and more interesting. Let's imagine Chloe is sitting next to a classmate named Tom before a lecture starts. The old Chloe, who didn't know this secret, might have said, im Chloe. Im Tom. Are you a first-year student? Yes. Do you like this professor? Yeah, she's okay. The conversation ends quickly. It's polite, but there's no spark. There's no connection. Using open-ended questions is the next step for Chloe and for anyone who wants to turn small talk into real conversations. It's the secret to moving from polite exchanges to genuine connection. And then comes the dreaded awkward silence. The conversation is over before it even began. Now, let's imagine the new Chloe, armed with the power of open-ended questions. Im Tom. Chloe, so, what made you decide to take this biology class? Tom, oh, well, I've always been really into marine biology. The whole world under the ocean just fascinates me. Boom. Now, Chloe has so much more to work with. Tom has shared a passion and interest, something she can explore. This brings us to the next, even more powerful level of asking great questions, the follow-up question. A follow-up question is a question you ask based directly on what the other person has just said. It shows that you are not just waiting for your turn to talk. You are actively listening, engaged, and genuinely curious. This is perhaps the most powerful tool for deepening any conversation. Tom said he is fascinated by marine biology. Chloe now has a sea of options for follow-up questions. Oh, that's so cool. What is it about the ocean that you find most fascinating? How did you first get interested in that? Have you read any good books or watched any amazing documentaries about it recently? Any of these questions will keep the conversation flowing and, more importantly, show Tom that Chloe is genuinely interested in his hobby. Let's continue the scene. Chloe, how did you first get interested in that? Tom, my family used to go to the coast every summer, and my dad taught me how to snorkel. The first time I saw a coral reef up close, I was completely hooked. It felt like a different planet. Chloe now has another golden opportunity for a follow-up. She could share a related experience or ask another question. Chloe, that sounds like an incredible memory. What's the most amazing thing you've ever seen while snorkeling? Notice how the conversation is building on itself, layer by layer. Each of Chloe's questions is a natural, logical response to what Tom just said. She isn't following a pre-written script. She is following the path of her own curiosity. This makes the conversation feel natural, easy, and engaging for both of them. A simple but incredibly effective phrase you can keep in your back pocket is, "Tell me more about that." Whenever someone mentions something interesting, a trip, a project, a hobby, saying, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Tell me more about that," is a warm and welcoming invitation to share. Now, it's your turn to practice this vital skill. I'll give you a statement from someone. Pause and think of at least 2 open-ended follow-up questions you could ask in response. Statement 1. Your colleague says, "I am so tired. I was helping my friend move house all weekend." You could ask, "Oh, wow, that sounds exhausting. How did the move go? Was it a big move? What's your friend's new place like?" Notice that a question like, "Did it go well?" is closed. It only invites a yes or no. But "How did it go?" is open and invites a story. Statement 2. Someone you just met at a party says, "I just got back from a holiday in Japan." Follow-up questions could be, "Japan, how wonderful. What was the highlight of your trip? What was the most surprising thing you learned about the culture while you were there?" Statement 3. Your neighbor says, "I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar." You could ask, "That's exciting. What songs are you learning first? How long have you been practicing? Do you play any other instruments?" The key is simple. Listen carefully, follow their lead, and ask questions based on what they say. By practicing open-ended and follow-up questions, you transform short, polite exchanges into meaningful, enjoyable conversations. You could ask questions like, "That's fantastic. What made you decide to learn the guitar? How are you finding it so far? What's the most challenging part about learning?" Asking great questions is a skill that shows deep respect and genuine interest. It shifts the spotlight from you onto the other person, making them feel like the most interesting person in the room. Here's the wonderful secret. When you make others feel interesting, they almost always think you're interesting too. They will walk away from the conversation thinking, "Wow, what a great person to talk to." Even if you feel like you hardly said anything about yourself, the effect is powerful. Chloe starts consciously using these techniques. She stops worrying about being witty, clever, or impressive. Instead, she focuses entirely on being curious. She begins asking her classmates open-ended questions about their studies, their hobbies, their hometowns, their favorite music. She learns to listen for the small, interesting details, the sparks of passion in their voices, and then asks thoughtful follow-up questions. Slowly but surely, her short, awkward chats transform into longer, more meaningful conversations. She discovers. One classmate shares her secret love for old black and white movies. Another grew up just a few towns away from her own grandparents. Another has a hilarious story about working a summer job on a fishing boat in Alaska. She starts getting invited to study groups, coffee meetups, Friday night pizza gatherings. She is no longer the anonymous, lonely girl in the huge lecture hall. She is Chloe, the person who asks great questions and truly listens to the answers. She is making friends. We've talked about starting conversations with small talk and deepening them by asking great questions. This is a huge part of the puzzle. But conversation is a two-way street. It's a dance. You can't just be the one asking all the questions and leading all the time. Eventually, you have to step onto the dance floor yourself and share a bit of who you are. This can feel scary for many learners. What if my opinions are stupid? What if my stories are boring? What if I can't express my feelings correctly? These fears are completely normal. But sharing your own thoughts, stories, and feelings is what turns a good conversation into a real connection. It's how people get to know the real you, beyond polite questions. Let's meet our final character, Ben. Ben has been following all the advice so far. He has the right mindset. He's focused on connection. He's a master of the A method for small talk. He asks insightful, open-ended follow-up questions. People love talking to him. They tell him their life stories. At the office, he's known as an incredible listener. But Ben has a secret problem. He feels like a fraud, a kind of interviewer hiding behind his questions. He's so focused on being a good listener that he never shares anything about himself. When someone asks him a question, he gives a short, simple answer and quickly asks another question to turn the focus back to them. His colleagues know all about their own lives, hobbies, and families, but they know very little about him. Ben wants to contribute, to be a real participant in conversations, but he doesn't know how. The first step for Ben is learning how to comfortably share your opinions. In many cultures, directly disagreeing with someone can seem rude or confrontational. But in many English-speaking cultures, like the US, the UK, and Australia, a friendly debate or simple difference of opinion is normal and even enjoyable among peers. The key is politeness. You don't want to say, "You're wrong," or "That's a stupid idea." That's too direct and can shut down the conversation. Instead, you can use softer, diplomatic phrases that show you respect the other person's opinion, even if you don't fully share it. Let's say Ben is talking with a colleague who says, "I think action movies are the best kind of movies. They're so exciting and fun to watch." If Ben agrees, he can add energy and enthusiasm with phrases like, "I completely agree. You're absolutely right. I love the adrenaline rush. Oh, I feel the exact same way. I could watch them all day." These phrases build a sense of shared experience and rapport. But what if Ben actually prefers quiet, thoughtful dramas? He doesn't have to lie. He can politely disagree while adding his own perspective. For example, "I can see why you'd say that. They're definitely exciting. For me, though, I tend to prefer dramas that make you think." That's an interesting point. I usually find action movies a bit too loud. I'm more of a fan of character-driven stories. I see your point about the excitement, but I think the stories and dramas are often more memorable and stay with you longer. Notice the structure. First acknowledge and validate the other person's opinion, then share your own. This two-step process turns a potential argument into a friendly, interesting discussion. Sometimes you might be somewhere in the middle. You could say, "I can see both sides of it. On the one hand, action movies are great for pure entertainment when you just want to switch your brain off. On the other hand, dramas really give you something to talk about afterwards." This shows you are thoughtful and consider different perspectives. Sharing your opinion is one step. Sharing a personal story is another level. This can feel even more vulnerable because of the fear that your story might be boring. But a story doesn't have to be dramatic or life-changing to be interesting. Some of the best conversational stories are small and relatable. A funny thing that happened at the supermarket. Something sweet from your childhood. A simple story about your weekend. The key to telling a good story in conversation is to keep it short and simple with a clear structure. Beginning, middle, and end. Beginning. Set the scene. Where were you? When did it happen? Middle. What happened? End. What was the result, or how did you feel? For example, "The funniest thing happened to me at the grocery store yesterday morning. I was in line and..." Even small, everyday stories can help you connect with others and make conversations richer, more human, and more memorable. The middle of a story describes the events. What happened? Use simple transition words to guide the listener. So, I was standing in the checkout line, and then, suddenly, then after that. The real trick to making a story engaging is to include a sensory detail or a feeling. For example, instead of just saying, "A man dropped his oranges," you could paint a picture with your words. This man in front of me, with a huge overflowing bag of bright, shiny oranges, suddenly tripped over his own feet. The oranges went flying everywhere like a bright orange waterfall, bouncing all over the floor. The end of a story is the conclusion or the point. Why are you telling it? It could be a funny outcome, a small lesson you learned, or just how you felt. Example: everyone in the line burst out laughing in a kind way, and we all started helping him pick up the oranges. It was such a chaotic but funny and human moment. It totally made my day. Ben decides to try this. He's in his book club, and they're discussing a novel about a character who takes a big risk to follow a dream. Everyone is sharing their opinions. Ben is quiet at first, just listening, his heart pounding. Then he takes a deep breath. Someone says, "I think the character was foolish to quit his stable job." Ben sees his chance. He uses a polite disagreement phrase he's been practicing. "I see your point, but I actually found his decision really inspiring." Then he takes a leap and shares a small personal story. "This actually reminds me of a smaller version of that in my own life. A few years ago, I was working in a job I didn't love, and for years, I'd always wanted to learn photography. For my 30th birthday, I decided to take a small risk. I used my savings to buy a really good camera and sign up for a night class. My friends and family thought I was a bit crazy to spend so much money on just a hobby. That class changed everything for me. I discovered I had a real passion for photography, a way of seeing the world I never knew I had. I'm not a professional photographer now, but that small decision to invest in myself gave me so much confidence that eventually led me to the much better job I have today." So when I read about the character quitting his job, I really understood on a small level why he had to take that leap. Notice how Ben's story has a beginning, middle, and end. He even connects it back to the main topic of the discussion. After Ben finishes, the room is quiet for a moment. Then the person who called the character foolish says, "Wow, Ben, I never thought of it that way. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that." For the very first time, Ben feels like he has truly contributed to the conversation. He didn't just listen, he shared a piece of himself. This deepens not only the group's understanding of the book, but also their understanding of him. Finally, there's expressing feelings. This can be difficult, even in our native language. In English, we often learn only the most basic words: happy, sad, angry. But real human emotion is much richer and more complex. Sharing your feelings helps people connect with you on a deeper level. It shows them who you are, not just what you think. Expanding your emotional vocabulary can make your conversations much richer and more precise. Instead of just saying, "I'm happy," you could say, "I'm thrilled. I'm delighted. I'm on cloud 9. I'm ecstatic." Instead of just, "I'm sad," you could say, "I'm feeling a bit down. I'm disappointed. I was gutted. I'm a little blue." Instead of "the movie was good," you could be more specific. "It was hilarious. It was thought-provoking. It was incredibly moving. It was a bit predictable." Using more colorful, specific words helps people understand you better. It makes your contributions to the conversation more vivid, memorable, and interesting. Let's practice this. Imagine a friend asks, "How was your week?" Instead of saying, "It was busy," try using descriptive and emotional language. "It was pretty overwhelming. To be honest, I had back-to-back deadlines, so I was feeling really stressed out and drained by Wednesday. But I finally finished my last big project this afternoon, so now I'm just feeling so relieved and looking forward to a relaxing weekend." This gives the other person more to connect with. They might respond with sympathy or understanding. "Oh, I hate weeks like that." You definitely deserve a relaxing weekend. Sharing yourself in a conversation is about balance. You don't want to talk only about yourself, but you also don't want to be a silent, invisible observer. The goal is a comfortable rhythm of give and take, asking questions, sharing opinions, telling stories, and expressing feelings. By learning how to politely state your opinions, tell simple, relatable stories, express your feelings with precision, you, like Ben, can become a full and active participant in the beautiful, intricate dance of conversation. So far, we've built a strong foundation. Adopting a confident mindset, starting conversations with small talk, going deeper with great questions, sharing our own thoughts and stories. We've followed the journeys of Maya, Leo, Chloe, and Ben. But real-life conversations are not always neat and tidy. Sometimes things get messy. You forget a word. Someone interrupts you. You don't understand a joke. You don't know how to end a long conversation. Navigating these tricky situations is the final skill to become a comfortable, flexible conversationalist. Let's start with a very common fear. What happens if I forget a word? You're in the middle of telling a story. You're confident in the flow, and then your mind goes blank. The word you need is gone. The first and most important rule: don't panic. Take a breath. This happens to everyone, even native speakers. It's not a disaster. It's just a normal part of speaking. Even the most confident English speaker sometimes forgets a word in the middle of a conversation. The key is to have a few simple strategies to handle it. Strategy 1. Describe the word. Think of it as a fun guessing game. For example, imagine you're telling a story about your new kitchen and you forget the word blender. You could say, "So, I bought this new machine for my kitchen, the thing you use to mix fruits and make smoothies. It's tall, with a glass jar on top, and it has little spinning blades at the bottom. It's very noisy." Almost certainly, the person you're talking to will helpfully say, "Oh, you mean a blender?" Then you can reply, "Yes, exactly. A blender. Thank you." Not only does this solve the problem, but it also makes the conversation more interactive and fun. Strategy 2. Use simpler words or explain differently. Instead of saying enormous, say very, very big. Instead of "I was absolutely exhausted," say "I was so tired I could have fallen asleep right there." Remember, your primary goal is communication, not perfection. It's better to keep the conversation flowing smoothly with simple words than to pause awkwardly while searching for the perfect word. Let's see Maya again at her international conference. She's feeling more confident and talking with a woman from Australia. She says, "There's a wonderful market in my city. Full of little stalls, they sell all kinds of, what is the word? Things made by hand, not in a factory." The woman smiles and says, "Oh, you mean crafts or artisan goods?" Maya replies with relief, "Yes, crafts, handmade crafts. Thank you." The moment wasn't awkward at all. It became a teamwork moment. Next tricky situation: interruptions. Sometimes, in a lively conversation, it's hard to find a moment to speak. Or someone might start talking at the same time as you. How to add your voice politely. If I could just jump in here. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to add that these phrases show that you're aware you're interrupting, which is polite and respectful. If someone interrupts you, if it's small and quick, let it go and continue after they finish. If it's an important point, politely reclaim your turn. As I was saying, anyway, to finish my point, this brings the conversation back without being aggressive. Ending a conversation gracefully. Sometimes you need to leave a conversation. Maybe you have another meeting, or the chat has gone on too long. You don't want to seem rude, but you need to go. The key is a polite closing formula. Start with something positive. Well, it's been so great talking to you. I've really enjoyed our chat. Then, if needed, you can add a reason. I need to get back to work. I have another meeting to attend. This makes it clear and respectful that the conversation is ending. With these strategies, describing words, using simple alternatives, handling interruptions politely, and ending conversations gracefully, you can navigate almost any tricky situation in English without panic. Knowing how to end a conversation politely is an important skill. When you finish talking with someone, you want them to feel valued and respected. Start with a positive statement about the conversation, something warm and friendly. For example, "It was so lovely talking to you. I really enjoyed our chat." Next, give a simple reason for leaving. You don't need to make up a long or complicated excuse. Just be honest and straightforward. "I have to run to a meeting. I should probably get back to my desk and finish this report. I need to go pick up my kids from school." Finally, if you want, you can add a future connection, which is optional but adds a nice touch. "Let's catch up again soon. I'll see you at the team meeting tomorrow." Let's see an example with Leo. He's talking to his friendly neighbor, Carol, in the hallway. They've been chatting for 10 minutes, but Leo needs to go inside to make dinner. He says, positive statement. "Well, it was so lovely to see you, Carol." Reason for leaving. "I'd better get inside and start thinking about dinner." Polite closing. "Have a wonderful evening." It sounds smooth, friendly, and polite, not rude at all. Another tricky situation in conversations is understanding different accents. English is spoken all over the world, and there are hundreds of different accents. Even native speakers sometimes struggle to understand a new accent. For example, someone from Texas might have trouble understanding a person from Glasgow. It's completely normal to not understand everything. The most important thing is, don't pretend you understand. Pretending can cause misunderstandings later. Instead, politely ask for clarification. "I'm so sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you say it again, please?" "Sorry, what was that?" More informal. "Sorry, I missed the last part. You said?" Another great technique is clarifying by repeating what you think you heard. For example, "So, if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying we should move the deadline to Friday. Is that right?" This shows you're listening carefully and want to get it right. Let's look at Chloe in a university seminar. Her professor has a very strong Scottish accent, and she struggles to understand some details. At first, she feels too embarrassed to say anything and just nods along. But then she remembers her goal, to understand, not to look smart. When the professor asks if there are any questions, Chloe bravely raises her hand. "I'm really interested in your point about the Industrial Revolution's impact on literature. I'm having a little trouble with the accent. Could you please repeat the part about the textile factories and the poets?" The professor smiles kindly. "Of course, not a problem at all. It's a strong accent, I know." Then he repeats the information slowly and clearly. Other students look relieved. They were struggling too. Chloe's courage helped everyone in the room. The main idea is that handling tricky moments in conversations is normal. You don't need a perfect script for every situation. The goal is to be polite, be honest, ask for clarification if needed. Keep the conversation smooth and friendly. Even small actions like saying a polite goodbye or asking someone to repeat a word can make a big difference in how comfortable and confident you feel. The key to confident conversation is having a toolbox of simple, polite phrases and the confidence to use them when you need them. Conversation is messy and imperfect. That's normal. Forgetting a word, needing to end a chat, or asking someone to repeat themselves are not failures. They happen in every language, every day. The more you practice handling these moments with grace and a little humor, the more confident, flexible, and resilient you will become. Let's look back at the journey we've taken today. Maya started frozen with fear in a busy conference room. She learned a liberating truth. Connection is more important than perfection. You don't have to speak perfectly to have a meaningful conversation. Leo showed us how small talk can help build bridges into a new community. Even a humble conversation about a slow elevator or a late bus can start a real connection. Chloe taught us the power of curious, open-ended questions. By asking thoughtful questions, she turned strangers in a huge lecture hall into potential friends. Ben found the courage to share his own story in a book club, adding his unique voice and deepening the conversation. Their stories are in many ways our stories. Becoming a confident English speaker is not a straight line. It's a journey with small victories, occasional awkward or funny moments, and slow, steady progress. It is not about perfection or a mythical destination called fluency where you never make mistakes. Instead, it is about enjoying the process, the adventure of connecting with fascinating people you meet along the way. The common thread through all these lessons, changing your mindset, mastering small talk, asking great questions, and sharing your stories, is one simple but powerful idea. Curiosity. Curiosity is what makes you engaged, interesting, and present. It is the secret to conversations that feel natural, joyful, and memorable. The most important thing in any conversation is to be genuinely curious about the person you are talking to. Be curious about their experiences, opinions, feelings, and stories. When you focus on truly listening to someone else, a wonderful thing happens. You stop worrying so much about yourself. You stop thinking about whether your grammar is perfect or if your pronunciation is flawless. Instead, you just listen and really listen. In that quiet, respectful space, natural and enjoyable conversation happens. The good news is that you already have all the tools you need to start right now. You don't need a perfect vocabulary or flawless grammar. You don't need to wait. You can start today. Here's how. Change your goal for your next English conversation from "I will speak perfectly" to "I will learn one new and interesting thing about the other person." Practice the AR method. Anchor, reveal, encourage in a low-pressure situation, like buying coffee or standing in line. Think of just one open-ended follow-up question to ask a colleague or classmate tomorrow. Remember, every great conversationalist you've ever admired was once a beginner. Everyone has felt nervous. Everyone has made mistakes. The difference is that they kept practicing, kept showing up, and kept choosing connection over fear day after day. You can make that same choice. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate your small wins. A 2-minute conversation is a huge success. And most importantly, be kind to yourself. Learning a new language is a brave and difficult journey, and you are doing it. This journey of learning conversational English is ongoing. And I will be with you every step of the way. If you found this lesson helpful and want to continue growing your confidence, make sure you subscribe to our channel, the Super English Talks, and hit the little bell notification icon. That way, you'll be the first to know when our next lesson is ready. Let's continue to grow our confidence and skills together. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.